tonight we are taking a sharp focus, rather, dissecting and of course tilting our lens to the Limuru 3 and of course the Mount Kenya politics. And of course, to help us unpack this discussion is one and only Eston Maina, a political scientist and of course a youth leader that is from Laikipia, yes, the Jubilee Party to be precise. Asante sana Eston for making time.
Thank you for having me.
All right, so straight away, fresh from Limuru 3 meeting, a lot of resolutions there, and of course a lot of promises and even a lot of criticism. Some of you are criticizing the government for its taxation, and that is something that we'll take a look at it. Well, let me first of all begin by the objective of this Limuru 3. As someone who has followed the meeting very closely, and of course I'm sure you are deeply involved in this the Limuru 3 affairs, did it meet the expectation? Did it achieve the required or rather the intended result at the end of the day, given the fact that many have termed it as a move that is seen to be a tribal based, some sort of political region, and something that could actually divide the country should we move in that particular direction. But of course, as the conveners and of course people who are actively involved in this, has it met the expectation? Did it at the end of the day, did you acquire the
threshold,
the final result, something that you're looking for?
What I will say is that we did not just meet the threshold. Mm-hmm. We surpassed it. We surpassed the expectation, because this is the first time we're seeing a convention that is emanating from the people. Mm-hmm. Because formerly it was the political leaders who facilitated the constituents and the citizens to some of these meetings. Mm-hmm. And now for the very first time we have a meeting that the people, due to their own aggrievement or maybe their own problems that they are facing, mm-hmm, they felt the need to converge and speak in one voice, and they facilitated them. They facilitated themselves. So how did the people get to convene? Of course, there had to be leaders who were supposed to facilitate, not financially, but to moderate. That is the word. There were mm-hmm leaders who were supposed to moderate. And the leaders asked, can you suggest people within your locality that would be interested to have a discussion that is not financed? People that are willing to come, sit down and converse without any expectations of lunch and whatnot. Mm-hmm. And people started sending names. Mm-hmm. And invitations now were sent out mm-hmm to those names. There were 4,000 of them. Mm-hmm. How many turned out? Over 5,000 people. So did we meet the expectation, or did we surpass it? We surpassed it. On the question of it being a tribal outfit, mm-hmm, it's really saddening that we have different laws for different regions of the country. All right. Because when we have leaders from the Mulembe Nation mm-hmm calling upon the Mulembe Nation to unite, mm-hmm, then it's a good thing. Mm-hmm. It's a good thing that the Mulembe Nation wants to unite, because it has been disunited for the longest time. Mm-hmm. But when such a convention is held from this Mount Kenya region side, then it is termed tribal. I would not see it as a tribal outfit. Mm-hmm. I want you to look at it as a bargaining front, as a bargaining block. The same way you look at, the ECOWAS, the East African community. You cannot say that maybe when we have the EAC, we're mm-hmm being tribal against the rest mm-hmm of Africa.
And that's the problem, because if each tribe will pull in one direction, let's say Mount Kenya advocating for the Mount Kenyans people and their right, then the Mulembe Nation, same, go to Nyanza. Don't you think the marginalized communities that for so long they have actually bear the brunt of being sidelined by the government in terms of key appointment and even in terms of resource allocation? Don't you think this is a bad move that just like critics says, could actually divide the country. Should we follow this same trajectory?
I do not think it would. It is something that is bound to divide the country, because sometimes it's good to be realistic. We can't be delusional. We do not exist in a vacuum. You have to, when you look at even the politics of developed nations, the element of tribe is something that you cannot, you cannot put out of a country, because people will always go back to their identity, and that is why even if you go to the to the most prominent countries like the United States, it is very difficult for a black man to be elected. But when these regions converge, the regions you're saying, the marginalized regions converge, now they will have someone who will speak on their behalf, because now when everyone. Why we have democracy is that we have the type of democracy where a few represent the many, so they can have someone from their region represent them. And why, particularly why we are pushing for the one man, one vote, one shilling agenda from Mount Kenya region, is for this reason. And even the marginalized you're talking about. They will be considered on a one man, one vote, one shilling basis. It is not a Mount Kenya thing.
And we'll talk about the one man and the 1 man, the one shilling vote. And let me draw you back still. Well, we are talking about now the unity, and of course it is one mountain, one voice. And very true in that regard. Well, now, remember in Mount Kenya we have at least political leaders elected. We have, by virtue of standards, when we go in terms of order of hierarchy, deputy president, of course, is the second senior most politician in the country. And many will assume that this is maybe a leader that many people look up to him, especially people from the Mount Kenya, to actually spearhead this drive of one man, one voice, one mountain. Fair enough. The question is, in your quest to make the dream a reality, talk to me about the hurdle and how you're going to achieve this. Because trust me, facing the mountain at this point, of course, require a lot of work and, should I say, resources to that point. So what's the plan in uniting Mount Kenya? On the question of having leaders in government, yes, the Mount Kenya region can boast a number of leaders, or maybe close to the majority of leaders in government. But I want us to look at the kind of leadership we elected. And now this now impacts on the voter, because now when you vote along party lines and not on individual basis, the kind of politics we play in Kenya is the individualistic kind of politics. It is not the ideological type of politics. And now we have people who decide to vote on maybe to vote for particular people just because they belong to a particular political party. And now we have now problems where the voters now voted in people who are just there to serve the government of the day, as opposed to the people. Now we have representatives in parliament who are not there to represent their people. They're representing the president. And you can remember there was a time when the president convened a meeting in State House, and this member of the members of parliament were saying the ground is hostile. And he told them, you do not have to be popular all the time. You only need to be popular when it matters. So when you have leaders that answer to a higher power, they say whoever pays the piper calls the tunes. And now we have leaders who are not representing the people, they're representing some higher power. And now the people have realized, and that is why they're convening. For the first time, they funded their own sitting. For the first time, people paid for their own transport, their accommodation, food. They traveled from as far as Laikipia, myself included, and we made way to Limuru. And you've really raised a very important aspect to this. Well, you remember at the very beginning I asked you about the objective, and of course you have said you met the objective. Now the question is, the real objective of this Limuru 3, what was it?
The real objective of it was to have one mountain, one voice, just like I have said. And Rome was not built in a day. Now hang on there. To have one mountain, one voice. Well, what about now the critics about the high cost of living? Was it part of the agenda, or is it fair to say
much of this Limuru 3 meeting, in as much as it was calling for one man, 1 shillings, one vote, one mountain, most of it was some sort of political rhetorics, and of course attacked directly, directed to the current regime.
Okay, this is what I will say. You cannot separate politics from your day-to-day life, because everything you do is politics. You know, what you wear, the price is determined by politics. You know, how you get to work, if you're going to drive, if you're going to board a matatu, the prices are determined by your government. So when we decided to have one mountain, one voice, it is the same voice you're talking about. You know, these cries, you know, we now needed to magnify them, because when it is you and me maybe shouting at different corners, now we can't be heard. But when we come together and maybe decide, Evans and so will represent us in maybe agitating for the rights or maybe our problems. Now you will have one voice, and you will now be able to have a sitting maybe with the government of the day and discuss on the matters that you don't agree upon. As opposed to maybe expecting Wanjiko there in the grassroots to have the president listen to her. That is almost impossible, because I don't even think, even during campaigns where the president has to go to the villages, they don't get to meet everyone. They just meet the few people. So, and that is why we needed to have a sitting, have a discussion, have resolutions as a region. Because when we see regions like Western Kenya, you know, when they're bargaining for power, they go to the president with demands. You know, we want roads, we want this, that, and that. And that is part of bargaining. And that is not being tribal. It is just, it is the element of government. You know, what is governance? You know, what is politics? You know, the allocation and distribution of resources. So it is for you to be on that table, you know, to decide on how these resources will be distributed. If you cannot be on that table, maybe you can have someone represent you.
All right.
And that is how democracy works.
And fair enough. Now let's talk about now the resolutions. One of them, you formed a coalition, that is Haki Coalition. And there was this drive, one man, one vote, 1 shilling.
Yes.
And this is actually a narrative perpetrated, or rather forwarded, by Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua. And hang on, that is one of them. And of course, but I'm very interested about now the coalition, the Haki Coalition. And now that this one was a formation of at least 32 parties, if I'm not wrong, leaders from different 31, including Jubilee, because I mean UDA, because I saw some leaders from and of course that makes it 32. Well, for those in Jubilee, and of course we have NAK Kenya, this is a guy from Azimio. So talk to me first about the formation of Azimio, whether it stands, you know, test of time, and where does it leave it? Is it now an exit plan, or what are we seeing into it?
The problem is that people associate Azimio with the element Baba. You know, Azimio is, you know, it is a coalition of several parties, you know, and of course ODM included. And just because maybe lately you have seen maybe the flag bearer of Azimio maybe now sitting down with the government, does not mean that Azimio is dead, you know, because now he has his own personal interest. He has his own personal pursuits that are different from the pursuits of of the parties and the coalition. Because even in ODM, you will realize that the majority of the members in ODM do not support this new, let me say, relationship between the government and the opposition. Because why we need a functional opposition is because there is need for checks and balances. And when you have a government where, you know, most of our elected leaders are, for lack of a better word, they are tumbocrats. They are led by their stomachs. They don't go there to... For instance, you remember the finance bill of 2023. Most of them say they had not read it. They just passed it. They just voted for it because that is what their president wanted. And that is why now we need Azimio. We need an opposition that is fully functional. In the event that you're saying, because politics, in politics you always have to be prepared, because not so many people knew that the party leader Raila Odinga was going to maybe sit down with the government. Nobody knew, and that is why it is always important to have a fallback plan in politics, and that is why we have Haki Coalition.
So this is a fallback plan.
Yes, it is in support of Azimio. Yes, but in the eventuality that the vision of Azimio does not get us to where we want to go, we have to have our own way to get where we want to go, and this is the Haki Coalition.
So first of all, do you support the relationship between Odinga and president? Because this is a very specific question, because it involves, one is eyeing actually the Africa Union chairmanship seat. But do you support the new pact between the two leaders? This
is what I will say. I will never be opposed to any attempts at peace. That is something I will never be opposed to. But what I will never support is having the opposition go to bed with the government, because each of them have a part to play. Even in the event where we have a friendly, we can have a very radical opposition that is always, running helter-skelter with the government, as opposed to now when you can have an opposition that sits down and talks to the government. Am I opposed to Raila Odinga and Ruto being, friends? And I am not opposed to that. But am I opposed to maybe the opposition now wanting to go to bed with the government? That I would not support.
And what is the general feeling in regard to the new pact between President William Ruto? Remember, he's now the chief campaigner for Mr. Odinga. So what is the general mood there as far as the leaders from Mount Kenya?
This is how I will put it. Politics is about interests.
All right.
Politics is not a marriage. Don't go there out of love. And I don't think these two gentlemen are sitting down together purely because they love each other. No, they're just there because their personal interests at this point align. William Ruto knows that for him to have an easier time come 2027, he needs Baba out of the way. What is the easiest way to get Baba out of the way? Get him elected as the chairperson of the African Union. So in as much as maybe the Raila Odinga camp knows that the government is not doing whatever it's doing out of love, but out of its own now, interest. I don't. There's someone who told us a while back that if there's someone that Raila Odinga has a problem with, the biggest problem, even if you look at his utterances, it is the man William Ruto. If you play back the political history of the two, you will see that their fallout was ugly, and it was actually personal. And the fact that you see these two gentlemen sit together and and have a common agenda, which is the AU, should tell you as the public, sometimes you don't need to fight for these people, because these people will call us on maandamano where we get shot at, and at the end of the day, what these people are seeking is just political leverage.
Okay.
And at this point now, I think out of the maandamano, Baba got the political leverage he needed to have a sitting with Ruto. But I want you to remember that
because it's fine. I'll give you time. When you say out of Mandamano, of course, Raila got the political leverage.
Yeah, he got the attention.
But this Mandamano, I saw Martha Karua, I saw Stephen Kalonzo Musyoka NEET, Jeremiah Kioni, the famous Sufuria.
Now you're getting my point. The fallback plan. Because now we have, let's say, 4 or 5 gentlemen who are agitating for the same thing, but we don't think alike. One day, Evans may wake up and decide this is the route I'm taking. So does that mean that now you stop the movement that you had started just because so and so has found a different, different pursuit? And that is why we need alternatives, and that is why I'm so much against this government that is trying to suffocate our political parties. They're trying to take us back to the single party rule.
Okay,
that is what they're trying to do, and that is why any attempt to convene and maybe form something that does not support the government is considered tribal. It is considered, let's say, detrimental to the growth of the country.
But it's fair to say the Limuru 3 was much of a tribal thing. It's a Mount Kenya affair.
No,
because if you have followed keenly the history of Limuru, we had the Limuru 1, and of course Limuru 2, then we have 3. The Limuru and the first one, remember how it was?
The first one was for the re-election of Mzee Jomo Kenyatta. The second one was now for the election of Uhuru Kenyatta. And now the third one, we are coming together and seeking direction as a community. So why is that tribal? Why is that tribal? When we have maybe let's say Kalenjin leaders come together, when we have Luo leaders come together, has never been considered tribal. Okay. I have never heard of anyone call out maybe ODM for heavily relying on Nyanza. It has never been termed as tribal. But when you come to the mountain and you have an outfit that is emanating from the mountain, now it becomes tribal. Why is it tribal? We are agitating for the same for the same things that every single Kenyan out there is agitating for. But remember one thing, charity begins at home. Okay. Some of these leaders who are at the forefront of this same movement come from a region. Some of these leaders, if they go to a region like maybe the lakeside, they would not be listened to. So charity has to begin somewhere, and it begins at home. When you consolidate your home unit, then you can go out there and talk to some friends. Now you can see my home is ready and set. Now can you join us in our movement? Okay. And that is how coalitions are made.
Now, even as we wind up on this, the Limuru 3 discussion, well, let me ask you this. Who was the convener of Limuru 3?
The people.
The people.
The people themselves.
And the people themselves, of course. Now, there is another very interesting aspect. The retired president, Uhuru Kenyatta. And of course, arguably, he is now the leader of the new coalition.
The spokesperson.
The spokesperson, definitely still very much alive to the fact that he calls the calls. Let me see.
Yeah. Okay. I want you to look at one factor, that he is the only person we have right now alive who has been president. So if we are seeking to have maybe a president from this region in future, who is the best person to seek advice from? He is the senior most politician in Mount Kenya, whether we like it or not. So what is wrong with us having him as our patron to advise us on matters, matters politics, matters governance, something he very much knows. There's no problem in having Uhuru Kenyatta as the patron. There's no problem in Mount Kenya coming together and saying, this is the person we want to speak for us. Because we have seen what he has done for the region. We have seen what he has bargained for the region, and this is a person who has the interest of the region at heart.
All right. Even as we wind up, now there is a very interesting happenings that we have witnessed for the better part of this week. I'm talking about now the perceived conflict between President William Ruto and his deputy Rigathi Gachagua, and we saw leaders, especially from the Nyeri County, of course led by the governor, that is Mutahi Kahiga, speaking very passionately about some of the things that they will not want to see happen to their son. And of course, do you think maybe it's about time some of these political differences between maybe the house maybe basically is on fire?
Where there is smoke, there is definitely fire. And if you have been looking at the that the political occurrences that have been happening, you will realize that for the longest time the deputy president has been sidelined. And it started off when, President Ruto decided to prioritize sending, Musalia Mudavadi on these state visits when he was not even the Minister for Foreign Affairs. And when that became an issue, what did he do to cover that? Now he officially made the Prime Cabinet Secretary to double up as the Cabinet Secretary for Foreign Affairs, so that if he decides to send him on foreign missions and not the Deputy President, he will simply be doing it because this is the Cabinet Secretary for Foreign Affairs. But we have seen it. We have seen, the sidelining. Why did it happen? Because, and that is now why we needed the Limuru 3. Because for the first time, we came into government without an agreement. When you look at, the western, side of the country, they came in with their own parties. They have their bargaining power. But when you look at Rigathi Gachagua, he entered, somebody else's outfit with no agreements, and now he's crying that he has been sidelined.
But the UDA was formed by both of them, the president and, of course, his deputy.
You cannot say that it was formed by both of them when you very much know that Ruto was under pressure to either pick Kithure Kindiki or Rigathi Gachagua.
But we're talking about the House, of which that is the UDA. And this is a political party that was formed by both leaders.
I want you to realize one thing. Most of these leaders you see today, most of these leaders who boast in Kenya, they were not elected on their own capacity. They were elected simply because they supported William Ruto, because he embarked on campaigns still when he was the deputy president. He campaigned way longer than everyone else, and as a result, consequently, he happened to speak to the hearts of the people. And now we had a UDA that was formed by people who knew that the only thing that could get them elected is saying that William Ruto is my friend. Rigathi Gachagua included. I can assure you, whoever Ruto would have picked back then from Mount Kenya would have still made him president.
Fair enough. And unfortunately, we have run out of time. And many thanks, Eston Maina, political science, and of course, youth leader from Laikipia County, Jubilee youth leader. And asante sana for making time, for sharing your knowledge and expertise as far as the Limuru 3 and Mount Kenya politics is concerned. And that is the time that we had